Thank you very much for joining me tonight. I'm very excited to be sharing with you my home lab and also how we learn information security skills. I'm going to be sharing with you a machine that I made. I called this one, what did I call this one? This is not the DC machine, but this is a very good machine because you're going to see today, you're going to learn about how to exploit a vulnerable Windows 10 machine. In fact, I have a network diagram here to help you visualize everything that we have. And on this diagram, as you can see, we have our internet. Please make sure to put this one in quotes. This is my home network. Then we have a firewall, which is your Ubiquiti machine, and we are attacking from inside. You might be wondering, why would you be attacking from inside? We are assuming there is a client that has been compromised. Somebody moved into your network and they are in your network. So we'll be attacking from here. We have a Suricata Zeek intrusion detection system running in Security Onion, and that's the one that we'll be using today. Splunk might not work for us because of licensing issues. Thanks. It's called Supervision. I almost forgot about the name. And so we have an intrusion detection system that shows us all the traffic that we are seeing here. If you look, this is what an intrusion detection system looks like. We see all the traffic that is coming in the lab via this port, spanned port on the switch. And then we can see what does it look like when somebody attacks our systems. And then, of course, the machine that we are attacking is a Windows 10 client that is sitting right here. It's running in VMware ESXi. So as you can see, this is the network topology. Before I get started here, I just wanted to address one thing. I think a lot of people keep asking me like, hey, you must have a lot of time. Why do you keep doing this? The main reason why we do this is so that when you go to work, when you go to an interview, you can prove to people that you have done these things. I had the hardest time getting my first cybersecurity job. Nobody took me seriously. Like, I would apply and I say I have this experience. They didn't care. The moment I started saying I have a lab environment, and this is what I've done. I might not have done this professionally somewhere else, but I've done it in a lab environment. People see that as you taking initiative, you actually wanting to learn, and also you taking ownership of your own career. So make sure to set up a lab if you don't have the experience. What you're going to find is the IT industry is broken. I think that especially the cybersecurity industry is broken. Everyone says, oh, we want you to have 10 years of experience, but no one is willing to train you. At the same time, if you apply with whatever you have, even your certifications, they will not even look at you. But the moment you say, hey, I know Splunk because I've deployed Splunk in my lab, I know how to use this Splunk language and I can query for events, and this is what I know, they can see the baselines. So make sure to have a lab like the one that I'm showing you tonight, because it does really help. And that's how I got my job. So if you're interested in making sure that you get the hands-on experience, have a lab like this one. All right, after that, like I said, our machine is running on Windows 10. It's actually on 192.168.38.37. So let's jump into my Kali Linux machine. Our scenario is that you're given a Windows client. You don't know anything about it. So the first thing that we do in order for us to gain initial foothold is to scan that host. We don't know anything about this machine. Our goal is to break in and prove to our client or our employer that, hey, this thing is broken, it needs to be fixed. Or this is what attackers would do. So the first thing that you do is, of course, we start with an nmap scan, -SV, -SC. I like to do all ports on 192.168.38. Let me actually show you where the machine is running so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's running in VMware ESXi. I shared a machine that you can also import in VMware Fusion, but this is what it looks like. Also, setting up this ESXi environment shows that you have the basic sysadmin skills. If you want to be a hacker, you really need to know what these things are. I mean, this is just a hypervisor that's running my machine called Supervision here. And of course, my IP is 192.168 3857. So if this is a client, you either were given this IP address, or you scanned their whole network, or you scanned for their public subnet that they might be given to. So you might do some OSINT to find any resources that they might have. Maybe they have websites or DNS entries that you can see, or mail servers that you can access externally. If it's internal, you either are given this, or you can do a ping sweep on the whole domain subnet, and you will find maybe an IP address like this. If this is for compliance, a client will just tell you, hey, here are 5 IP addresses or whatever number of IP addresses. You scan these, don't scan anything else. Your scope stays within this range. So in this case, my scope is 192.168.38.57. So because of that, I'm not scanning anything else. I'm just going to scan that. Otherwise, I'll get myself in a lot of trouble. So yeah, thanks, Mike. If you are really serious about gaining your information security skills, I've seen that there's a big difference between someone who shows up and say, I'm ready to learn, employ me, and someone who shows up and says, hey, I have played around with things. And the real truth is that when you have a lab and you start playing around, your interest just gets even bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Before you know it, you'll be labbing all the time because you're so curious. Like, I'm very curious. That's why I keep showing you guys every week. And last week, for those who were here, you saw that it doesn't always work out. You get stuck. You make silly mistakes. I was so mad last time. I think there was something I was not doing right. It was very small and it's just tedious. So because of that, today I actually came up with some music. If I get stuck, I'm going to do something like this. You're going to hear this a lot. If you hear this music, I'm stuck. So I'm going to do that so that I can channel my inner African, so I can really get motivated. I will not talk. I realize that if I talk at the same time trying to figure out what I'm doing, I get like brain fog. So I'll put music and you can watch me think as I fix things. All right, I'm not going to waste your time with this scan here. I actually did a similar scan because I knew it does take a long time. But what we did here is we ran an Nmap scan. Nmap is a network mapper, which is a tool that you can use to scan a network. And SV stands for service version. I want the results to show me the version of any service that we see. Then SC would run some default scans. I always do this. I don't know if it does a lot, but it's like the default Nmap scans. And of course, our IP address. This P here for Nmap stands for scan all TCP ports. So I did not scan UDP ports. As you can see, I only did all TCP ports. If you're going to be doing this for a client, I encourage you to do a UDP port scan because people do run services on UDP. This time, I'm not running anything on UDP, so I'm only doing TCP ports. That's why I have this P here. It's very important to know that. Just like last week, it's very strange, but you do see port 22 open on Windows. It will really throw. I did this because I knew it would throw a lot of people off. Like, wait a second, SSH on Windows? Yeah, it's actually running SSH because we are running this device expert SCP server that we can use to move files around. So we do have port 22, which is open. In this case, there's really nothing we can do with this port 22 because we don't have any credentials yet. So we move on to RPC. There's RPC client, which you can use to scan and see if you can sign in with anonymous login. I did share some notes last week. Scan for anonymous RPC client authentication if you can. I don't have that. And we also have some NetBIOS 139 here, and also file share, which is Windows file shares. I also don't have anonymous login, so I'm not going to even bother to show you how to do that because I've done it so many times. But make sure to scan using simple tools. Maybe I should just do something like this. I don't like this tool because it dumps down what we're doing here. We need to know what we're doing, and Enum for Linux will reach out to the server and try to enumerate for any shares that we have, the domain information. It does a lot of work in the background for us. And if you are just starting out, I don't encourage using Enum for Linux. It made me lazy for a very long time. I actually started using this too. Then I went back and realized what it was doing. So if you have never used Enum for Linux, go and find out how to enumerate SMB shares and how to just enumerate port 445 in general manually, then use this too. But for now, I'm just going to use it. I think -A. I'm just looking for help here. I forgot what the options this thing takes. -A lowercase. Okay. Um, 57. So this is enumerating our domain. Usually, if you're looking at a domain and there's like exposed shares that are free for all, you will see them here. But what you also notice is that it might even tell us what our domain name is. In this case, it's not even finding anything. This is good for us. Let me make sure. Okay, yeah, it's 57. So we didn't find anything this time. Sometimes, in most of the time, especially if you're doing CTF and the OSCP, you will see a lot of information here. Right now, you are not just seeing anything because I didn't set anything to that. So moving on with our methodology, 445 is not going to give us anything. And this is a Windows remote desktop port. You should know this by heart if you are like, if you have done this so many times. 3389 Windows remote desktop. This is a very, very important port because if you get credentials, you can just sign in using remote desktop. So because I don't have any credentials, I mean, you can try to brute force remote desktop. For the most part, if you're brute forcing domain joint accounts, you're going to be logged out. It will be logged and you'll be caught. So brute forcing should be the last thing that you do to anyone's system. I mean, brute force is like a lazy man's hack. I don't do brute force until I really get stuck. And for the OSCP or in any client engagements, I would stay away from brute forcing people's services. Unless if I really think that they are not monitoring it and there are no other ways, then maybe brute force will work. All right, so that brings us to this port here, 5040. It says unknown. I always say on this channel, if I see a port that I have no idea what it is, first I'll Google that port. What the hell is 5040? I actually Googled this last Sunday, so I'm just going to show you the same thing that I did. It's also a netcat on 192.168.38.57. Just run a simple netcat on that port and see if you can get in. This is how you identify buffer overflows for the most part. If a service is running and it is buffer overflow, usually this thing will let you in and you see something that you can interact with. In this case, that's just a default port that was open, but if you see an unknown port, at least try to interact with it. And also Google what the internet says what this port is. All right, these steps that I'm taking here, I hope they help you understand, like when you're given a bunch of ports, don't freak out. It's just a bunch of ports. You can go through one at a time, make some reasonable, of course, justifications as to why you moved on, enumerate enough. Don't spend too much time on port 445 wishing you can find something when there's nothing there. But also enumerate it enough so that you feel comfortable to move forward. In this case, this port here, if you attack a lot of Windows, this is by default open on Windows. Someone who doesn't know that will be looking at 5985 and banging their heads. How do I enumerate this port? I have seen this port on a default installation of Windows. And that brings us to 6060. All right, this one actually talks. We like ports that talk. What do I mean by they talk? Well, it tells me SSL cert. That means that this port here is going to be mostly HTTPS What that means is if I'm going to try to interact with this port, I need to go to the browser, put HTTPS. If I put HTTP, it might not work. That's why if you see SSL in the output here, chances are you need to put HTTPS. It doesn't mean you don't have to check both, but SSL is a secure port. So I'll go here and I'll say HTTPS 192.168.38.57 on 6060. Let me show you what happens when you don't put HTTPS. I'll let it load. When you put HTTPS, it will complain like, hey, by the way, this thing is not secure. Yeah, of course, we're here to hack this thing, so we don't care about its security. When you don't put HTTPS, you see some characters here. Someone who is not familiar with Windows and HTTP in general will be like, well, I have no idea how to move on. I see some gibberish. Well, you did not put HTTPS. The port told you in plain English, hey, I actually have an SSL cert here, even though it's self-signed. So respect that by going to HTTPS. And when you do that, you see something familiar. Some of you who were here last week, you are like thinking, oh man, you didn't bring this thing again. Yeah, I did. I was not happy about how last week's live stream turned out. The machine wasn't complicated enough. It was just too straightforward. This one is actually a multi-layered. This one will be like a medium machine on Hack the Box, or it will be like a 20-point machine on, say, the OSCP or something like that. So we know how to attack this service here. It's Manage Engine Device Expert. If you are not familiar with that, please watch my live stream from last week. But first thing that we do is we just Google this service here. We're like, hey, what's up with this? Oh, we know this thing here is vulnerable. It's Manage Engine Device Expert. We go to the internet, we Google that thing. I'm going to show you the results. Manage Engine Device Exploit. We saw the name, right? He said, hey, I'm Manage Engine Device Expert. A few things to highlight here. This thing is from 2009. That should be a good indicator for you as an attacker. Like, hey, they haven't updated this thing from 2009. Chances are there is an exploit for it. And if you don't know whether there's an exploit for it, what you can do is you can go to the vendor's website, look at their change log. All these vendors, they like to tell you like, hey, here's what changed. Here's what changed. Look at the version from 2009 and see if it's actually there. And you actually see, oh, the change log from 2009 says this thing is vulnerable. But with our simple Google search here, you can read this one. I want exploit DB. I'm going to go through this very quickly because we did this last week. It's this one. This is where you need to know how to read exploits. If you don't know how to read exploits, you are really, really in dead water. In fact, this is just one of them. The second exploit that I'm going to do is going to even challenge you further. If you cannot read other people's proof of concepts and make sense of them, you're going to struggle. That's what attackers do. Attackers don't actually, most of the time, they just see, oh, this works, and they go for the easiest path possible. And sometimes if it's published here, they'll use that. If you read this, it says, hey, by the way, there's user credential disclosure, and this is what it means. What are they doing? They're sending a GET request. If you have no idea what a GET request is, you need to go back to the drawing board and understand how websites communicate. Like, when someone visits www.google.com, what does a browser do? Does it send a GET request? Does it send a POST request? What are the options requests and all those things? You need to go back to that. But right now we're sending a GET request. To me, that means that I can just go to the browser and visit this path because it's a GET request, and I should be able to see whatever they're talking about here. So just copy that. if you really don't know what a GET request is, you need to spend some time on the basics. All right, so this week though, unlike last week, this thing is not talking much. This thing is actually just saying, hey, I only have one thing, an administrator's hash. Okay, we like that. It says admin, administrator, great. I don't know what that hash is. Well, I thought I knew what that hash was. So we call our friend hash identifier. Hey, hash identifier, can you tell me what the hell is this hash? And you see, oh, no result found. From last week, I showed you that if you look up further, you actually read on GitHub that this is MD5, an MD5 hash that was also base64 encoded. And I explained in detail in my previous video from last Sunday how you actually do this. But in a nutshell here, because I have another interesting exploit for us, we actually just use a Ruby script. Remember from last week, we said, oh yeah, we have a Ruby script that we can use. This is a base64 encoded MD5 hash. Very fun to do. So we were like, okay, let's just do this. If you have a base64 encoded MD5 hash, it's not the end of the world. And this feels like something that the OffSec people pull on people. They will give you something silly like this that requires a little bit of research. Because you noticed last week, it's not obvious how you base64 encode an MD5 hash and get it decoded and also use hashcat to get it. You know, few steps of understanding how hashes work. But in this case, we're saying, hey, let's use Ruby. We're going to use base64. We'll decode this hash here. If you try to decode it using Kali, you get a bunch of gibberish. But this is how you do it. So we say Ruby all right. So what we did here is with this Ruby script, we just decoded base64 encoded MD5 hash. What do we end up with? An MD5 hash. So with this MD5 hash, we just need to decode it. According to our exploit, which we should have spent some time reading, it says the passwords are salted MD5 hash. Oh, here's another problem. If you are very weak with your encryption and hashing, you'll be like, what the hell does that mean? Simple Google search says, hey, how do I decode a salted MD5 hash? It'll give you the results. Literally type, hey, Google, how do I decode a salted MD5 hash? There's a bunch of documentation out there that will show you that. For now, I'll just copy that and then put it in my hash.txt. I wanted to repeat this one this week because I feel like last week I went through it very quickly. And to be honest, I really like this. Like, I'm a big fan of how this whole machine that I made, I'm kind of like proud of myself because of that. All right. Can I have a hashcat? I'm just going to reuse my hashcat command from last week. It's still in here. And by the way, this is how you grab. Quick tip is if you wanted to call, this is what you learn from watching somebody doing things live. Let's say I wanted to just rerun this. Well, first I need to tell you, hashcat minus M10 says, hey, it's a salted hash. In fact, my hash is wrong. According to hashcat's documentation, I should have the hash after the hash salt. All right. you need to put the hash and it's salt like this in order for you to crack a salted MD5 hash. All right. So now that we have the correct format, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing here. I'm going to run hashcat minus M10 tells hashcat, hey, by the way, expect a hash with a salt. And I have no idea what this minus A0 is. I forgot what it is. I remembered it last week. I'm going after the hashes that are saved in hash.txt, and I'm using our trusted friend roku.txt, the easiest one. And here is a little nugget for you. If you wanted to call this command here, you put an exclamation mark 366, saves you a ton of time. No copy paste anymore. Now hashcat is going to go and going to try to crack it. I have not cracked this hash, but of course I know that it will crack. That's how you crack an MD5 hash that was salted. And if the salt was easy and you knew what the salt is, here's the hash. Here's the password. The password is Lion King. So keep that one in mind. We literally went here, got the person's MD5 salted hash, and decoded it from base64, got Lion King. All right. If you still like, hey, that's confusing, we also did this last week. Now we need to move on to this week's new little nugget. So as you can see, I'm dropping some knowledge that I'm learning. So if you really like this, please make sure to subscribe to my channel and also like this video so that YouTube knows more people need to come. So that was what we needed to do here. A real attacker will know, okay, so what do I need to do? Maybe you can sign into this device expert. This time it's not going to lead you anyway. We just got a password, admin Lion King, right? So now we're going straight to, oh, we got 8009. What are you running on 8009? But this time we failed to get any response. Yeah, thank you, Mike. So 8009, we gotta go check out 8009. Just like what it said here, we actually failed to get a response. So maybe there's something here, maybe there isn't. This thing is not talking. For simple exams like the OSCP and most client environments, they don't try to be weird. I mean, if something is vulnerable, you'll find it. So we'll skip this one because, I mean, this thing doesn't want to talk. We like things that talk. So we see 8080, which is nice. And I see Tomcat. I see JSP, which is also really good. If you see Tomcat, you might be in business because usually Tomcat is notorious for all kinds of fun stuff. So right now, this even talks further. It says, hey, by the way, the title is this. Well, we like that. So we're going to go to Google and actually look that one up right now. So all these people who say, oh, hacking is this fancy thing, it's not. It's a lot of knowing what you're doing, being methodical, thinking outside of the box, and figuring out how you can break into things. So here's the source forge for this thing. If I have an application that I don't understand, sometimes I would install it, then I'll interact with it and see how it behaves. Then I'll compare what I was given and see if it's the same thing. If they have the default installation, this is the source forge for this SCADA BR thing. So I'm going to go to exploit DB. You might notice that I'm not typing all my Google searches with you. It's because I don't like autocomplete on my browsers here. So going to exploit DB, which if you're going for like exams like the OSCP, they either have something on exploit DB or it's on GitHub. I mean, they're not going to hide, or somebody's blog or something like that. They're not going to hide the exploits somewhere. So here I know it's here. So I say, hey, exploit DB, do you have any SCADA BR? Yeah, we do. We have one from 2021. Now it's just a matter of deciding, okay, Arbitrary file upload authenticated, arbitrary file, so it's the same thing, but for Linux and Windows. I'm on a Windows system, so I'm going to go with the Windows one. And here comes the most important thing for tonight. If you're going to take anything from today, this is what distinguishes between somebody who just memorized and watched a bunch of videos on YouTube and just thinks they know what they're doing, to somebody who knows, at least who understands what they're doing. This is an exploit for SCADA BR 1.0. We don't know that yet. We don't know if it's 1.0. So first we need to go and verify, is this even the right thing? So we visit 8080. We ask this thing, hey, do you actually respond? We're accessing it on HTTPS, which it might not like. It only likes HTTP. If you don't know the difference between HTTP and HTTPS, you'll be banging your head wondering what happened. Okay, so we get our answer. SCADA BR 1.0 right here. So we know for sure that this thing actually talks and it's 1.0. Okay, here's where you connect 2 and 2, right? You probably enumerated the service before, and it gives you a username admin and a password of Lion King. Someone who doesn't really know how to connect 2 and 2 and who doesn't know that in the real world, people are lazy, they'll reuse the same username and password across everything. A lot of you who are on this live stream, I can guarantee you, some of you who are really terrible, your Facebook username and password is probably the same password as your Gmail. And for some of you who are really terrible, it's the same password as your bank account. So it happens in real world. People are lazy. People don't want to work too hard. So we found out it was admin. And we found the password last time of Lion King. What you're going to take away from here is people are lazy. They will reuse the same password everywhere. So if you're given a password for one service, FTP, SMB, whatever, try the same password everywhere. That's the biggest takeaway here, because then you can figure out if people are actually following the best practice. Any administrator for IT should not be doing this business here. That's the first part. So we know the password that we found using this first service works for the second service. A lot of people who fail the OSCP don't even try this for whatever reason. Okay, so password reuse done. This thing is saying, oh, we want to be authenticated. No problem. We have a username and password, and we know we can get in. So now it's just a matter of, do you really think that I'm just going to make a machine where you copy this and run it and point to an IP address? That's not going to happen. And that's not going to happen for the OSCP. And most people who believe in security through obscurity who also think that they're safe. Let's try to understand what we're doing here. And this is a very, very important concept here. Being able to read other people's proof of concepts and being able to read other people's blog posts and follow along. And it challenges your understanding of, writing simple scripts. You don't have to be an expert in Python to read this. But what it's saying is, hey, it's calling Python. It's calling Python 2. I know that because it doesn't say Python 3 here. That's very important, of course. Right away, I know, oh, okay, I'm dealing with Python 2. This was tested on Windows 7 and Windows 10. Going to my Nmap results. I already know this is probably Windows 10 because Nmap does tell us that. So I know I'm looking at the right thing here. All right, so what are we doing here? It says, oh, if you're missing any arguments, it's going to tell you, it will say, hey, by the way, this is the usage. Great. And if you run this without any arguments, it will tell you, hey, by the way, here's an example. Run Python. The name of the exploit. If you saved this with the default name, it will come with some number. It will not be called this. That's how the Win, script kit is from people who know what they're not talking about. This one has a name. You have to name it to whatever that name is. Then, of course, the IP address, which is going to be your IP address, the port that is running. If I really wanted to mess with people, I would have actually changed the port to something like 9,000. So you actually are forced to change the port. Then, of course, the credentials. By default, it's admin, admin. Of course, I changed the credentials. We know it's going to be admin Lion King. So we know the usage. Admin Lion King, we know that. Port 80, that's true. The IP address we know is 192.168.38.57. The name is going to be what we save it as. Okay, here's what happens. You can, yeah, thank you, Mike. You can say, okay, let's go and let me show you what happens when you just look at this and you're like, yeah, I know how to run it. Here's the syntax. So I'm going to download this to my Kali Linux. I'll make a mistake. I'll show you what exactly happens with people who don't think and people who know what they're doing. Because if you're not thinking and you're like, oh yeah, I got an exploit, I'm going to point and shoot. This is not a cannon that you just point and shoot. All right, so I went ahead and downloaded the exploit. I named it exploit.py. I just like the name of it. It sounds malicious. Exploit.py. This is why my YouTube channel doesn't make money. I say exploit too many times. So, you know, if you say exploit, YouTube is like, yeah, you must be saying something bad. I almost got banned from here because of that. So if this is the same exploit, I'm going to show you. It's the same deal, right? It's importing Python, yada, yada, yada. Okay, let's run it the way it's saying. 8080 username password. I'm going to show you that it will fail. Right? Python, the name of the exploit, the IP address, and such. On my Kali, I have Python 2 and Python 3, so I have to call Python 2 by name. If I don't do that, it defaults Python 3. So I have to call Python 2 by name. If you don't know how to call Python, you'll be stuck here fighting Python because probably Python 3 is default now, and you have no idea how to call Python 2. Or you might be missing a module or something. So knowing Python is really going to help you here. Then it's going to be 192.168.38.57 on port 8080, admin, and our password is Lion King. Where did I get this? That's what it says. It's literally saying, hey, this is how you run me. Okay, if you do that, this is the point and shoot. It will run. It will definitely run. Anyone who has taken the OSCP and failed, they know they found the right exploit. They ran it. It just didn't work, and they didn't know how to fix it. If you speak to somebody who failed the OSCP, they will tell you, yeah, I found the exploit. It was easy. I Googled it. Yeah, then what happened? Oh, it didn't work. This one is an example of that. It didn't work. Now it comes down to, okay, what the hell didn't this thing work? You and I don't know this. I didn't know this before I made the machine. I had to figure it out, and I'm going to show you how you can easily figure it out. It doesn't actually say much here. It says web shell not found. So we have to go back and say, okay, why the hell didn't this thing work? And if you don't know how to look that up, you are in deep trouble right now. You know you found the exploit. It's the most frustrating thing. I found the right exploit, but all this is just gibberish. Well, I'm going to help you figure things out very easily. First, we broke down this line here. We said, okay, it's just saying, hey, if you don't see the right syntax, print this stuff to the user. That's what it will do. It will just print this stuff to you, and it will sleep for a second, and then it come back. Okay? It's looking for a flag, which is not, in this case, it's saying false. Then it's saying login. It will try to log in to HTTP, the IP address that you define, which is as host, on the port that you defined. So if the port was changed and you are such a script kiddie and you don't even realize the port was changed, it will not work. So it's looking for the port. In this case, you're lucky I didn't change the port. So pay attention to the port. Did the port get changed? If it was, update accordingly. In this case, it wasn't. The host, you need to know what that host is. It's looking for /SCADA BR. Well, Howard, having been a sysadmin, It's very weird talking about myself in third person. I was a sysadmin before, so I thought it's a very smart idea. I don't put it on the default here. I'm just going to skip this thing here. I'm just going to let you go straight to the site. How do you know that you are actually accessing this via this? If you go to here, do you see anything in the URL that says SCADA BR? No, you don't. There's nothing. We literally can go to this site by just going to 8080. What this is showing you is that this site is not running on /SCADA BR. Again, going back to the basics, if you don't know how websites work, you are going to be tripped. You're going to think this is harder than it is. We are not visiting this /SCADA BR because we don't have this. I put my website on the root directory, so this is gone. A lot of people who were struggling to exploit this machine, they were like, well, I ran the exploit, it's not working. Yeah, it's because we don't want to point and shoot. I literally just removed this out of the equation, put my website on the main root directory, and all of a sudden, everybody got lost. And that's how you screen those who are just running in point and shoot scripts and those who actually know what they're doing. So what do we do now that we know, oh, this actually doesn't exist? We need to remove everywhere in this script where it says /SCADA BR. This is how the OSCP makes their money. A lot of people don't even pay attention. They fail. Half of them should have just looked either the port or the directory where the website is running, and the exploit will probably work. But of course, they're not that smart, and they think exploits are just supposed to work out of the box, and that's not the case. So goal here is search throughout the whole exploit, remove every time we reference /SCADA BR, and go to the root. So this needs to go. The first one needs to go. And a find and replace actually works better here. I actually used Atom and just did a simple find and replace. Every time it says SCADA BR needs to go. If you still leave it, the exploit will not work, and you think you have the wrong exploit or something is wrong. No, it's just because you're not paying attention. So do a find and replace /SCADA BR. And this really speaks to your knowledge of how to read exploits, how to read Python. You don't have to be a Python expert. You just need to know, oh, what is Python doing? You don't have to write this whole thing. But if you can read this, you'll be able to know that this is what you need to do. So the biggest takeaway for today is doing that. So here's how you do it. Then you put this and say, all right, so the first one is just in a comment, so no problem. Hit enter, the next. The next one is also in a comment, so N for next, all right? And of course, here is where I need to change it. You need to remove that. Yeah, so you need to remove that. So next, you save it. I just removed one because there's like 5 or 6 instances. I didn't want this video to be about editing a file. What I did is I took this file, I put it in Atom, I did a find and replace, Notepad++, whatever you use, find and replace that instance where it says, like this one. You need to replace that one as well. Save the exploit. The final one that I have that is actually clean, I saved in /home, my user, documents. I did see this when I was practicing with log4j in December. People had intentionally put some gibberish there so that script kiddies cannot reproduce it. So I actually figured out, oh, what kind of nonsense is this? It doesn't even work. Then I realized, yeah, they do that so that people don't just copy and paste and run it against other people's. So I had to replace. So yeah, thanks for saying that, Mike. So here's our exploit.py. This one doesn't have all that scatter stuff. It's clean. As you can see, there's no scatter here. There's no scatter anywhere. So we're going to run this. And to run it, I'm just going to run the same exact command that we ran earlier. It's a Python 2 one. Someone will look at this and like, oh man, hacking is really it's really hard. What I've found from my little experience is if you know how to read what's going on and you can actually understand what's happening, most of the time you can break into a lot of these things. They're very simple. So here, it actually succeeded. It says, hey, web shell found in here. Oh, great. So if you are doing this from my machine, if you downloaded my machine, yours might be on 1.jsp. It looks like it's incrementing by 1 on the URL here. But this is where we can find our web shell. It literally tells you here, hey, by the way, this is a fake shell. Someone, again, who doesn't know what they're doing, that it literally says fake shell here. They will be like, hey, ID, who am I? No, it's fake shell. It tells you, hey, web shell can be found here. So copy this and go there. Sometimes not overthinking things is going to be your best bet. You think when you have to, and not, in this case, we're told, hey, go here and you will get a web shell. Nice. Okay, so what happened here? We used a public exploit to get a web shell. So we can say, who am I? Oh, it tells us, hey, by the way, you are on this machine called Vagrant 2016. You're in as an account called SVC Manage Engine. Biggest problem that you're going to have is if your account starts with SVC, usually it's a service account. That service account doesn't have much going on it other than running a service. So SVC doesn't lead you much. It doesn't give you a lot. This time it does. But before I even start using this web shell here to run more commands, I would like to come back to this scatter thing. I don't like just pointing and shooting. I like to go back and look at how did we exploit the damn thing? What was happening here? What happened here when we were just uploading things? What happened in here? Was that's really concerning that we just run a script and we get a web shell and we're like, yeah, we just run it and just run it. I mean, it's nice, but wouldn't it be nice if we knew how to do this by hand? Wouldn't it be nice if we knew how things unfolded in the background? And here is a very, very quick and dirty way of what I understood happened. Don't crucify me for this. Removing this scatter stuff here, it was saying burp URL. It looks like we were going to this view edit page. And what happened is we actually uploaded a JSP file. That's good to know. That's really good to know. I didn't even look at all this noise here to see what's really happening. But what I know is that if we go to our port on this location and we edit this, we go to this edit, we end up uploading a JSP file. A JSP file is going to be a file that we can put, I mean, you can look up JSP files for reverse shells. You can go to Google and say, hey, Windows web shell JSP. You will see a simple source code. Okay, so we are uploading JSP file to this location here. That's what I know. I don't know much about this thing, but all I know is that it's doing that. So I'd like to go find out. This is what distinguishes you from everybody who is just after some damn OSCP, who is like, oh, I just want the OSCP. You actually truly want to know what happened. We want to get to the truth of this. Oh, come on. Oh, I cannot do that. So let's sign in. Let's not save that. I'll show you what happened because I know I had to track it down because it's very important that we know what a script did for us, because just in case tomorrow you can't actually reuse the same script. So it went to that path. Oh, come on. I'm going to go to it manually so you can see. I think this is what I did. I actually had to go through all these tabs here and figure out which one is it. So starting from the left here, this is just a watch list. It's just login.html. Okay. Then going to the next one, graphical views. It's in the graphical views where you can actually exploit this thing right here, the second one. I don't know why this thing keeps sending me out. I need my African music back now. Okay, so it's the second one, the graphical views that you need to edit. If you click on this one, that's what gives you that page. Then you have an upload option. I'm going to try it one more time. If you try to sign me in, I'm going to give up. But if you click here, that's where you will be able to upload a file. And you can upload any JSP file that you want. It could be a simple, straight reverse shell. That's what this thing did for us. All right. So once it uploaded a JSP file, that JSP file, of course, gave us the ability to have remote code execution on the victim. And in this case, we can run any command that we want here. One of the most important commands, of course, is when you get there is who am I? You want to know who did I get in there as. In this case, we got in as a service account. Not fun. It's a service account. But sometimes people are very, very, very lazy. They'll give service accounts all kinds of permissions. So who am I? /all will tell you like, hey, did this service account get any specific permissions that it shouldn't have? And usually, if you are doing this for someone, you take a screenshot and like, is there any reason why this service account was an administrator on the domain? And you pull your hair like, what is wrong with people? This service account was supposed to just run one service and that's about it. Why is it a domain administrator? Sometimes people don't know. Sometimes people just inherit permissions. It happens all the time. That's why you and I get jobs, right? We go and test people's security because people do make mistakes, or people don't know, or people just don't care, which happens sometimes. All right, so this service account, of course, does have permissions. This is not the intended way, in whatever way. We see this set impersonate here. If you see set impersonate, you can escalate your privileges. Just go to Google and say, hey, I got set impersonate on Windows. How do I escalate my privileges like that? And you will escalate your privileges on Windows 10. I have not updated anything, and I actually still don't know how to fix this set impersonate. It's like I hate set impersonate, to be honest with you, because every time I set up a machine, people always get root using set impersonate, and I have no idea. I have not tried how to fix it. I don't have time, but hate it. It's by default comes with Windows, which also shows you that if you break in somebody's Windows system, set impersonate is going to be there, and you're going to actually have a field day. All right. We're not interested in set impersonate or any of these permissions here, because today I'm just going to show you a very simple thing that you should do as part of your auditing, right? First, this is sufficient for most clients to say, hey, I broke into your system. I was in there. Fix your system and you can move on. For certain exams like the OSCP, they don't like this. If you cut the flag from here, they'll tell you you never compromise the system. You will not get full points. You will most likely fail. They actually want you to get a reverse shell, a full shell. And here's how you get a shell from a web mesh. One of these web commands that you have here. All right, so first, let's do something interesting. Someone probably assumed that I was going to say this. I got, or I will get most of my reverse shells through niching. On this channel, I got almost every time. There's something called niching. I'm not going to do niching today. And I always say, if you don't know niching, man, I don't know who you know, but you gotta know this niching shells here. So you should have a niching directory. I'll show you what that looks like. Maybe I should do it from here. Niching shells will save you a lot of time. There's a bunch of them, and they all work. But what we're interested in is this one here. If it's a Windows system, always try PowerShell. PowerShell is going to be your best friend. If you view this one, I'm actually going to just do a tail on this one. There's a bunch of gibberish on top of this that I don't want to go through right now, but maybe I should. This is what niching does. It will go to your system and evoke PowerShell commands. Again, in this time and era, I think if you want to, and you're serious about, testing people's systems and interacting with users and fixing their systems, PowerShell is one of those things that you have to know. Everybody uses Windows. Windows 10 is everywhere. Windows 11 is out there. People are writing malware in PowerShell. So you gotta know PowerShell, unfortunately. Buy the PowerShell in 30 days or 30 lunches, whatever that book is. That's how I learned my PowerShell. Really good book. Learn PowerShell in 30 lunches or something like that. It's on Amazon. If you Google that, you'll see that the book is there. You need to know PowerShell. I don't think it's optional at this point because you are a security person, and apparently the world loves Windows, so you gotta know PowerShell. But what this is going to do is it will run the invoke TCP on this port here. So what I would encourage you to do is, you might not know what's going on with niching, but copy this line here. Trust me, niching works. Copy this line, paste it all the way at the end of this script. That's all you have to do. Copy this line here. What this will do is it will get this PowerShell module on the system. Then immediately after it gets on the system, it will run the invoke TCP and reach out back to you on port 4444. Niching, the best one ever. I've done niching on this channel like almost every live stream. So today, forget niching. I would like to go back to the basics. But what ends up happening is you can have niching saved as shell.ps1. Really? Did I have a typo? Okay. So if I do a tail shell.ps1, this is my copy of the same niching with that line at the end. You need that line with my IP address and the port that I want to receive a shell on. But forget that. Let's do netcat. That everybody knows. And I'm also doing this because I would like to track setutil today. I have a netcat.exe. This is how we get reverse shells in Linux and Windows. Netcat, super. One thing that we need to know is netcat is going to be called by Windows Defender if it's a Windows 10 machine. Windows Defender is going to catch it, it's going to remove it. If Windows Defender is not enabled, you can get netcat there. If Windows Defender is enabled, fire up niching. Niching always bypasses Windows Defender and also bypasses execution policy. All right, so let me start with netcat first. I have a netcat binary here. If you go on your Kali and say locate netcat.exe, you probably have some binaries somewhere. What I trust is this one from user Windows resources binaries, And also this one, if you have the sec list, you want to make sure that your binary is not corrupted. You want to have the real original binary. On this channel, some of you who have been around for a while, you have seen me copy a corrupted binary and it never worked. And I sat here and I was frustrated. I've been frustrated on my live streams with netcat binaries to a point where I know if it doesn't work, check your binary. Did you get the original one? Did it get corrupted in the process of moving, or did Windows Defender remove it? Know that. But trust, always get one from a trusted source like SecList or Windows. There's also another one, I think Netcat 64 for 64-bit. Sometimes you can get one, but I know that this one works for both 64 and 32-bit. And in today's world, to be honest, it's all 64-bit. It'll be very silly for anyone to still have a 32-bit Windows system. But of course, people do that all the time. All right, so we have a netcat binary here, which should come by default with your Kali. Copy it to your directory. Now we just need to move that binary to our victim. How do we do that? I don't remember anything. All I know is that I write notes when I do certain things. There's this little tool called setutil that will work. We can also, setutil is like living off the land. People use this for managing their certificates, SSL certificates. But of course, we are going to use it to move netcat. So what we will do is we just copy that. We just cannibalize on this one. Let's see. Our binary is called netcat. And remove this whole thing here. 192.168.38. What is my Kali Linux IP address? IPA 41, and it's called netcat.exe. By doing this, I'm assuming I'm listening on port 80. So I need to run my server on port 80. Setutil works very well with my Python 3. Next week, remind me not to use Python 3. Maybe I should set up an SMB server to move artifacts next time. And for now, Python 3 -m HTTP to server on port 80. So I'm serving in the same directory where netcat resides, an HTTP server for anyone to come and reach out to me and get my artifacts. So I go to my victim. I would like to get netcat on my victim, but you might notice that I'm dropping it in C, Windows, temp, and it's called netcat.exe. Why would I drop it in the temp directory? Because anyone can write in this directory. That's what is, this is like a wget command. This is how you download files if they're hosted by a website and you're on Windows. Living off the land, setutil by default is going to be on Windows. So why not do that? So I'll send this. And right away I say command succeeded. That's first verification. Second verification, here I get 200. That's good. So because it's me, and I really have, I have some serious trust issues. So I'll do a dir on C, Windows, temp. Oh, by the way, Windows is not case sensitive. And for me, I like that. So in C, Windows, temp, what's in there? Oh, it's actually not showing me anything. Okay, that's fine. Now let me see if I can run the same netcat command and get my reverse shell. I don't know if it's there yet. I was supposed to verify with my dir, but for whatever reason, it's not showing me. In my notes here, I can search for netcat.exe. Whenever I ever referenced that. Okay, I guess here, if I forgot the syntax, I'm just showing you, I already know the syntax for this, but I'm showing you, hey, oh, if I want to call that binary, I'd say, hey, by the way, go to C Windows temp naked.exe -e, run the command line, reach out to my Kali Linux, which is on 41. Because I've been talking, I'm now like, is it really on port 41? Yeah, it is. Reach out to port 3000. I'm just going to leave that port there. That's all I want. Because somehow, netcat -lv and p on 3000. That's the port that we're reaching out to. Let's run that. This is going to kind of like struggle a little bit. And sure enough, I couldn't switch my terminal fast enough. Yes, I couldn't switch my terminal fast enough, but 3000, I got a shell. Again, I can do a who am I here. This time it's like, yeah, you're still the same person. you didn't escalate your privileges. This is what the OffSec people like. They like this shell as evidence that you got your shell. Even though, I mean, you can do what you want from this. That doesn't count. But this is fun also. Clear screen. Oh, come on. Okay, this is going to be fun. I cannot clear my screen in here. I honestly don't know how to stabilize my shells in Windows as much as I do in Linux. In Linux, I know I can stabilize my shell and I can make it do what I want. Windows 1, it's a nightmare. Okay, so first, without doing anything, I would ask this thing, hey, where am I? What's going on in here? So if you're dropped in a web application, of course you are interested in the configuration files. Why? Because people drop password hashes in the conf files, especially if it's a WordPress. If it's running WordPress, go and check the wp.conf or whatever they call the configuration file in there. You want to mess with these and check the configuration files. There's database passwords. The moment you get a database password, you drop in the database, dump everybody's hashes, you're even better. This time there's nothing in here, but I'm telling you, don't move on until you check the configuration files, because if there's databases that are running, for whatever reason, WordPress does keep passwords in plain text, or the hashes will be right there. If I don't see anything in there, I'll go to the C directory. Why would you go to the C directory? This is where things usually get interesting. If there's any custom services like Manage Engine, they demand to have their own directory. So now you're like, oh, Manage Engine. Lucky for you, you already exploited this earlier, so you move on. But you also have this IT share here. Again, lazy sysadmin puts IT share. You can look for the permissions for this thing here, or you can just say, hey, it's all lowercase, but Windows doesn't care. There. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. I get password reset.ps1. This was just my way of saying, hey, I'm not going to make this into some laborious, problem. But it's a big problem for us to realize. If you get into a system and an administrator has PowerShell scripts that are just running there, and they've hard-coded passwords, which I have done. I'm not embarrassed to admit this. As a sysadmin before, I've hard-coded passwords and left them there. Is that a good thing? I didn't know any better then, but that happens all the time. Here's a PowerShell script in an IT share that you didn't see earlier. It's just a file that we saw, so the power of go through everything. And by the way, there are things that look normal and there are things that don't look normal. Home in Windows, that's kind of interesting. I would have gone there. Manage Engine, that's a custom. Perf logs, that's normal. Windows, Program files, that's normal. Program files 86, that's normal. TMP sometimes doesn't show up, but I don't know where this one came from. Users is normal and Windows is normal. What you want to do here is you want to, usually you don't find anything interesting here. You want to jump in program files. If you see Google Chrome in there, enumerate the hell out of that. Google Chrome might have password. If you see Firefox running, any browser that you see in program files or program files 86, make sure you check them out because browsers are notorious for leaving artifacts for people. In this case, I don't have anything in there, but I have a shade that just sitting there. This is actually shared with everybody who can sign into the system. That's why we can see it here. Which brings us to when people have little scripts that make their life easier, they will save. This one is actually a password reset PowerShell script. It actually does reset passwords. So I put this one here because I wanted a simple privilege escalation and also to emphasize PowerShell scripts that you have on any system should not have plain text passwords. They should prompt people to put passwords on the terminal as they run them, not hard-coded. Last time I did something like this, I showed you a Git repository where someone accidentally committed a PowerShell script, something like this, that had a password. Then they went and removed the password, but they didn't realize Git keeps history. So someone can go through your commit history and see, oh yeah, you went and removed a password that you had put in there. It doesn't work. So if you make a mistake and you commit a password to a Git repository, just change the damn password. If you have a password reset script, which as a sysadmin, I used to have a password reset PowerShell script that would do multiple scripts actually. This time in Windows, if you want to catch a file, you type, and then let's just view this. Ideally, you want to loot this back to your victim. You want to steal this file back to your Kali, but this time I'm just going to type it here. What is this doing? Oh no, we are now back to freaking PowerShell and we know nothing about PowerShell. A little bit of PowerShell would be really helpful, and I don't know. This time we're actually importing an Active Directory module, and we're saying, hey, grab a list of users from a text file from C temp user list.txt. I actually didn't put this one there, so this one doesn't really matter. What I wanted you to quickly identify, which should have been very simple, is we're setting a variable saying, oh, new password is going to be this password. Okay, that looks like a very complicated password. That's good, huh? I mean, this is not easily guessable and nobody can do that, but this is a password reset script. My brain is now thinking, I have a password reset script. I don't know other users on this system, but I have a password reset script. I have no idea what this is for. It's just looking for a list of users which do not exist. In this case, it's saying for each user in the list, generate a 15-character random password. But at least for now, it had set a new password. And by the way, this script actually doesn't make sense if you look at the logic for it. As I'm talking about it, I'm like, yeah, no. I just literally like inserted this here. You have a password. It's supposed to generate a random password for the user and then reset the passwords and for Active Directory. But it's, at least for whatever reason, there's a password here. We don't have users. There is no user list.txt. That was on purpose. But Windows does tell us though. See, users. This is where you find the list of users that are on this system, at least the ones that can sign in locally. Even though this is saying for Active Directory, because it's an Active Directory module. Back to our initial concept, password reuse. Is it possible that these administrators are lazy and they think that this password is safe, that they'll use it for the vagrant user? I did not think that it was a big stretch for an attacker to think, I found a password, I'm going to try it anyway I find a user, which you should do. So we found a password, we found a user that we don't know. This leads us to the end of the machine. If you try the password that you found in a share file that was in C against a Vagrant user, you'll be in as Vagrant, and Vagrant is an administrator and you've owned the machine. So that password there, let's see if we can, I'll just show you. This is the machine. But just to make sure that it's complete, in Windows, I mean, in Kali, how does this work? How do you get a reverse shell? I mean, how do you get on Windows systems from Kali? Last week, I showed you WinRM. And someone in the comments said, hey, let's just use Remina. I use this a lot in Try Hack Me. Let's see if we can actually use remote desktop. So if you use Remina for the first time, you probably have to do a new connection. It's a quick connect on 192.168.38.57. Why Remina? If you go to our Nmap results, remember we had 3307 open. 3389. This is a Windows remote desktop port. If this is not open, your next bet is to look for WinRM port, which I think is this one, 5985. Then use if WinRM. If you don't know how to access Windows systems after you get credentials, you might be a little shaky there. But of course, these are very loud ways of accessing the system. The username is Vagrant. The password is the one that we copied. Domain, we don't know. So I'll just put that there and let's see if we can connect. Yeah. And sure enough, we are in a Windows system. That's how you access a Windows system. I'll show you a better terminal. Oh, of course, it blacks out the other one. We're in a Windows system using Remina. But here is a better one. If you use a Mac, I encourage you to use this tool here. So what happens when you do Windows remote desktop? It blacks out whoever was in there. It's a very loud way of accessing a system, I have to admit. Probably better, you're better off saved by if WinRM, because if WinRM will actually encrypt your connection. I think it does, because last time I couldn't detect anything. So now we're in. And we're in our system. If you look at the terminal here, now Siri is trying to talk to me. Okay, of course, we're Vagrant, but we say, who am I? Again. Search all. Look at all these permissions that we have. I mean, we are everybody. This is a local administrator account, of course. So that was just my lazy way of saying, hey, let's finish this on a high note and let's not complicate privilege escalation, because I think we introduced a lot of really interesting concepts. So if you're here and you're like, man, that is a lot of things. How do you know that? I'm really, honestly, just like you. I get curious and I start messing with things. I start playing around. I don't think I know it all. I don't think I know much. In fact, I tell everybody that I'm learning, just like you. My curiosity really, really gets me here. So I'm like, okay, what the hell just happened here? We use attack box to go to Windows 10. In our lab environment, this intrusion detection system should have seen my shell being moved, my setutil and everything. So we gotta really account for what we did here. And this right here is going to be what distinguishes you from everybody else out there. A lot of people will say, "Hey, employer, please hire me. I'm a really good learner. I will do anything it takes to learn what you want me to do." When you do what I'm doing right now, you're saying, "Hey, employer, I'm a very curious person. I learn a lot. I'll bring more value to the environment because if I see something that doesn't add up, I'll investigate it. I like to find answers. I like to know what's going on. I don't just run your templates and follow some instructions." Cybersecurity is really not for people who follow the rules and just are given 5 steps. Here's how you balance a book, and you just do it. It's for people whose minds are like uncomfortable with ambiguity. We just ran a bunch of crap here and we have no idea what does that look like for defenders. We need to be able to answer that. So first, let's refresh this. And that's a curious mind. And that's, I think, if I were ever in a position to hire people, that's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for someone with a master's degree. Anybody can get a master's degree. You cannot train a curious mind. Is this person genuinely interested in knowing what happened, or are they just going to be a button pusher in my environment? You don't want button pushers to be investigating your incidents. You want people who know what they're doing. You don't want button pushers to be doing pen tests for clients. You want people who ask questions. And the question that we're asking here is, well, what kind of noise happens when you run setutil in an environment? Well, first, an intrusion detection system here did catch what we were doing. Look at all these events. I mean, this is a lot of noise. You as an attacker, you now know, if I'm going to be running Nmap and setutil in people's environments, I'm going to be very, very noisy. And if your intention is not to get caught, maybe I shouldn't be running Nmap. Maybe I should write a custom synscan Python or Bash script that just does a simple half TCP scan. Because Nmap apparently does embed its own user agent in the scans. So if you look, I've shown this several times. So those who have been here for a long time, you're like, yeah, we know that. But I'm going to show you this anyway. Let's do a quick drill down here. I'm surprised I only saw that. Oh, it's because I canceled my Nmap. This is probably Nmap somewhere. All right, I think I canceled my scan. Let me put this to 8 hours. I'll show you the results from earlier. I didn't do a full Nmap scan for you today. So let me. Really? What happened here? I know this is Nmap right away because usually Nmap will set up a user agent. GoBuster will do the same thing. I think DevBuster does the same. But for sure, Nikto will also say, hey, by the way, my name is Nikto. I'm running a scan on your network. Here's my name in the user agent field. So you do not want to have that happening when you're running these tools. They're very loud. And now I'm concerned, why didn't this thing catch any of my attack traffic? All right. I do see a bunch of noise here. So I know something happened here. So Kibana is going to show me. I really like Kibana because Kibana is like very similar to Splunk when you're searching for events. It's the same idea. You go here and you're like, hey, by the way, I would like to get, this is the Kibana querying language, by the way. I'm a big fan of the Kibana querying language. Splunk is great, but Kibana is like my go-to. Yes, you. Thanks, Mike. Mike saying I always change my user agents whenever possible. You can actually manipulate Nmap to even spoof your original IP address if you want. So this is what we did. We generated a bunch of traffic around here, probably from our Nmap scan. Let's go and dig through what we had, and we use the Discover tab, which is really nice. What I'm looking for here and what I want to show you is if you move binaries in plain text like I was doing, they will most likely get caught. I moved netcat, just the executable file. Suricata, I've actually not tested this, but Suricata, if Suricata intrusion detection system is doing its job, it should catch that someone is moving binaries in plain text on the network. If they base64 encoded those binaries, you might not see them. Let me do it .exe actually. And again, I'll also say this here. You only do this. That's interesting. I do see my traffic here. Let me search for set util. Nothing. I have no idea why this thing didn't catch it. So what happened here then? I'm just going to look at the raw traffic. And this is what I said earlier. Your curious mind should be like, okay, you should have caught binaries moving across a network. You should have caught reverse shells. In that case, actually, let's look for port 3000. We should have caught 3000 at least being caught here. If it didn't catch this one, I'm just gonna give up. No idea why it wouldn't do that. Okay, so destination port of 3000. Of course, we do see a few here because we did that. So why did I look for this? This is how I got my reverse shell. And Zik is going to see the connections here. So let's take a look at that. Take this with a grain of salt coming from somebody who doesn't do this for a living, but who is very curious. First, I'm asking, why the hell did I see a lot of these? That is not good. Who should be our source IP? This should be our victim. Interesting. For whatever reason, the intrusion detection system didn't see my reverse shell, but this is how you search for it. And now I'm curious, what's wrong with this thing? Uh, 444. All right, here's an earlier version of that I wanted to show you. When I got my reverse shell earlier, you should be comfortable looking at this stuff here, and it should not really terrify you. It's nothing. I'm telling you, it's just a breakdown of the data that was seen moving across the network. We have an ID or a connection ID in this case that you can use to identify this artifact. So if you use these unique identifiers like this ID here, you can use this to search for the same incident in the future. It's just how it works. The index is what code this. In this case, it's just a Zik event. The client IP was 41, which is our Kali Linux. And if you look here, the destination IP was our victim. And that was us reaching out to port 444. And this was a connection event. You know, simple things like this. It was coded by Zik. Get familiar with intrusion detection, right? And I think a lot of people, when they learn snort events and snort rules, or they learn about Zik when it was called Bro. In this case, it's a Zik con event. That means that we saw a connection. These two people were talking on this port. You can use this to solidify your suspicion that something funny was happening here. In particular, you're looking for the ports that were involved, the hosts that were talking, what protocol, and also the rule that probably, if this was suricata, the rule that fired, in this case, you're just saying, okay, this is what I saw, and indeed there was a connection that was seen. You can also look at this and try to verify how many times the connections happened. In this case, we only see that to 444, it only happened once. So intrusion detection system, very, very important. I'm now curious why netcat.exe was not seen when I moved it. What I think might have happened, I think I know. You and I are going to learn something very quickly here. And this is a very important lesson. I trust me, I did not plant this here. This is a very, very important lesson, especially if you're going to be a cybersecurity engineer designing systems for detection. Look at my time here. This is not the time right now. My intrusion detection system is seeing this 8 p.m. here, but my time is actually different. My NTP server is not syncing in this lab, which is something that you should always, always know about in your environment. This thing is thinks that it's 8 p.m. when it's 10:44. I think that's why I cannot see. I also need to check my time on my security onion. Security onion probably thinks a different time. So to debunk that, let me change my time. Every time things don't work, I know it's NTP. Why did I say? I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. The reason why I was unable to see, again, I'm going to repeat myself here. If you find yourself in an environment where you care about security and you're collecting event logs or network events, make sure that everybody's time, everybody agrees. By everybody, I mean every system agrees on what time it should be. That means using a local NTP server that is central. Usually people use their domain controllers. And make sure that you get your time correct. Because as you can see, I was not seeing my netcat and I'm like sitting here thinking, what the hell? I ran netcat in this lab. I should see netcat. Of course, the time was off. So make sure to synchronize your time. It will haunt you. It will make your incident responders inaccurate. And anybody who's worth their salt should fix this. So kind of embarrassed that this happened right now. But know that. So here's our netcat. Like I was saying earlier, you can see it was actually uploaded to the victim. In fact, this is how we got our reverse shell. Remember when we say, hey, run and go to port 3000 and do that, there you go. If everything is not encrypted, you want to make sure that you hide. What is the takeaway for me? As someone who's trying to be better in information security, who is trying to be better as a pen tester or red teamer, I'm never going to run my transfer netcat in plain text. I'm going to invest my next step for me to move forward in my career. Hide this stuff. Make sure they don't see this stuff. So far, what I know is I can base 64 things and decode them on the other end. I know there are multiple ways I can do that. I need to upskill on making sure that when people go to the intrusion detection system, they don't just see my payload in plain text like this. This screams noob, and of course, this is noobvile, so there we go. But you can see it actually happens. So let's look at, what else did we see? We were looking at port 444 earlier, no, 3000. Actually, I do have a destination port, and I have a query here. Let this thing finish. This one. So we're saying destination port of 3000, and source IP of 192.168.38.57. Why didn't this work? Do I need to mess with my time again? Yeah, it's looking at the last 2 hours. Let's go back to absolute. Trust me, I know how to change these times here. Kibana is just messing with me. 2 hours ago, let's make this 24 because of time. Interesting. So I cannot see my port 3000, but I can see my netcat. Let me look for setutil. All right, there we go. If only I knew how to do this right. All right, so here's when we ran setutil to move files. You might be thinking, why do I care? I just compromise the system. You want to know what happens when you run these random tools on someone's network? What do you see? This is why this is what I think will distinguish you from, hey, I just got my certified ethical hacker. Please hire me. No. How about you show me what you know? In this case, yeah, I played with setutil. I was moving files around, and Kibana showed me that setutil actually shows in the logs, Zeek connections will actually show that, hey, we did see, again, user agent of setutil showing up. All right. So if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I would like to answer your questions, but this is now just exploring and figuring out what we do. I hope through me talking and showing you how I function and how I learn, you're also learning something. I never know. Most of this probably makes sense to me because I function that way. But if there's something that is not clear or you're like, what the hell are you doing? Just let me know in the comments. Otherwise, this is how I learn. I also identify my own weaknesses during this process. And the good thing is I'm honest with myself. I don't know how to hide my tracks when I'm moving files around the network. I know it's a very important thing to do. I don't know how to memorize all the syntax. I write notes. And I mean, that's me. So if there's any questions that you have, please let me know. Now, this is bothering me. Can be a live stream with me without something bothering me. Okay, there, it's working now. This is how we got our reverse shell. As you can see, this was actually coded by Zeek. We use port 3000. And it's a Zeek connection event. Very, very interesting. Of course, you can take this further. Like if any files were moved, let's do that. So if you go to your Hunt interface within Security Onion here, you can actually track down any files that were moved. Now this one, it did a filter. I'm going to reuse the same one. So this one is a cone event. I would like to show you how you can actually just track down, say, netcat. This is a binary that was moved across a network. Sometimes you'd like this binary to be analyzed by your team, those people who are, very, very experienced in binary analysis. Maybe they are like, hey, we need that file. If it was a netcat, if it was a custom one, let's see if we can find it. I think this is when it was moved. So do not hold me accountable to this. So this is an ID. I'm going to see if I can track down the pickup file for this thing. There we go. So what did I just do here? I'll explain. I said ID is equals to that thing because it's a very unique identifier. When we saw this file being moved in the URI here, I hope I have the correct one. So I'm hunting for this damn file because I want to find out, okay, what happened to the file. So you can click, I think anywhere here, go to Actions, Pickup, and here's a pickup file. Download the pickup file, open it in Wireshark, then go to Files, see if you can download the netcat. This time, of course, we know what netcat is. If this was BT's file that is custom and we're trying to figure out what he put on our system and want to reverse engineer it, this is how we would do it. So here's our Wireshark. Mine is kind of color coordinated, of course. What you're looking at here, without exaggerating and making myself feel like I'm talking about very important things, I would say this stuff that you're seeing here is gold. It's an end-to-end analysis of everything. This, people go to school for a whole semester to see what I just went through from the beginning to now. So what we have here is Wireshark, which, I mean, you can spend a whole 7 hours talking about Wireshark. But I picked the exact file through my Kibana, and I hunted for it through Security Onion. I see a get packet here. This is when we downloaded netcat. Like I said, if this was a netcat, this binary will be very, very important. If an attacker puts something on your system, maybe you want to look at it further. But right now, as you can see, I can follow this HTTP stream. Of course, this is just this is classic Windows binaries. It will say like this cannot be run in DOS mode. If you see this line here, you know, yeah, I'm dealing with a freaking Windows binary. And user agent, of course, was setutil. User agent is kind of very important. And here's all the gibberish from the binary. Now, how do I download this to my system? And we hope that you're downloading it to an isolated system, not your main system. Because that would be bad if you're downloading an attacker's binary to your main system. Then, of course, they're going to compromise that system in your process of trying to figure out what you're doing. So we know, oh, it's just a bunch of gibberish, but it's a Windows binary because usually they say this. Someone correct me in the comments, but I always see this every time I've looked at a Windows binary. It says this program cannot be run in DOS mode. Every time. So it became my like, okay, if I see that, it's an executable in Windows. Because sometimes they don't put .exe at the end, but this is a dead giveaway. All right, so going back here, how do I then download this file? Don't quote me on this. It has been a while since I downloaded a file from Wireshark, but I think if I go to File, Export Objects, HTTP, I'll be able to export that object. If it doesn't work, don't crucify me for that. But, all right, there we go. There's our netcat file. You can save this Again, please don't save vulnerable applications to your main computer. Do this in an isolated, safe machine. Do not be downloading viruses that exploited your machine, and now you're saving them on your machine in order to analyze them. By the time you're doing this, I'm hoping you have some, knowledge. So now we can save this, and once we save it, we can give it to those who know what they're doing. I got a prompt here that's saying, hey, it wants to save it on my, you know, and there you have it. End-to-end exploitation to knowing what we're doing. If you feel overwhelmed, you're like, I have no idea what just happened there. To be honest, I still don't know what I just did either. So you and I are on the same page. Keep coming back here every Sunday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. What I always say is if we do this for 5 years and we intentionally grow every single time we do it, I mean, 5 years from now, I'm going to be watching this video laughing at myself saying, man, I had balls of steel to be doing that live because I knew nothing. That's the idea. We need to learn and we need to keep learning. And if you like that type of learning, make sure to subscribe and make a date with me. 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. You learn something new from me. Otherwise, thank you for joining me. I think this is a good place for us to end. It has been a lot. I covered a lot of stuff. Some people probably joined. They were like, yeah, this is not for me. Left. Oh, yeah. Thanks. I really have to put this to the broadcast. This is really good. If possible, save it as in. Don't put the ESXE on your system. Change the extension like Mike is suggesting here. But as you can see, we went from knowing how to break into an application to now looking through Wireshark. I mean, I don't know. If I were hiring people, I'd like people who can do this stuff in my team. That's just me. And I hope you learned something. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It has been a long night. Please remember to like and subscribe. I will always be here every Sunday at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. I probably won't make a machine every week, but if I do, I'll be posting it in the community section. I don't post it anywhere else, so keep an eye on that. Otherwise, thanks for being here, and I will see you next week.